child moving towards a securely attached relationship. The main ideas that include the empowering, connecting, and correcting principles are part of the TBRI, or Trust-Based Relational Intervention technique. TBRI is trademarked and was developed by Dr. Karen Purvis and Dr. David Cross, co-directors of the Institute for Child Development at Texas Christian University. Basically, TBRI is a research-based approach of interacting with or parenting children from hard places. I have completed the professional training in TBRI and am thrilled with the healing it can offer to children and families. I fully believe that TBRI holds the key to unlock deep healing with children from a difficult start in life. TBRI does encompass a lot of information, but in this training, we are only going to touch on the main ideas. TBRI can work well for any child, but particularly children from a hard place can thrive with this approach. Your child can be considered as being from a hard place if they experienced a stressful pregnancy, difficult birth, early hospitalization such as for prematurity, abuse, neglect, or trauma. It only takes one of these risk factors for a child to have fallout and need healing from being from a hard place, but many of the children we see have several or even all of these risk factors. So when a child is from a hard place, their brain has not developed in an optimal environment and neurochemistry may be out of whack. This hard place experience in early life, in whatever form, can alter the way the brain develops and trigger changes in neurotransmitters that drive the child's central nervous system. Neurotransmitters are chemical messengers that tell our lungs to breathe, our hearts to beat, and our limbs to move. They also play a vital role in our mood, memory, and ability to cope with stress. In children from hard places, key neurotransmitters can be altered in potentially harmful ways, which affects both behavior and learning. They may have an overload of stress chemicals and less than normal level of calming neurochemicals. Simply, their brains don't function as they would have if they were nurtured in an optimal environment. And this is not the child's fault. Tender, loving, consistent parenting, as TBRI promotes, will aid in the healing of the child from the hard place. A child's most important time in brain growth occurs in their prenatal experience and during the first year after birth. For many adoptive families, and especially those adopting internationally, this time has long since passed when the child's adoption finally occurs. You see, for optimal development during the first year of life, children learn that they have a voice. A loving caregiver meets their physical and emotional needs. When children receive tender mentoring, they learn competency in social, emotional, cognitive, and the sensory systems. When children do not receive this, the brain and all of development is altered. We know from animal studies, for example, that when animals are raised in impoverished environments, their brains have fewer connections between brain cells than when the environment is sensitive and nurturing. When a child is cared for in an orphanage or foster home during that first year, an adoptive family must err on the side of caution and prepare that there were many occurrences where the tender, consistent, efficient meeting of needs did not occur. For example, the baby that has a dirty diaper and cries to request his diaper is changed, or the baby is hungry and cries to request a feeding, or the baby is lonely and cries to request a cuddle. If these cries are not answered lovingly, consistently, and efficiently, the baby experiences that his needs are unimportant, and that his caregiver is unreliable. When placed with an adoptive family, this child will certainly have a hurdle to overcome in learning how to trust. So, TBRI, trust-based relational intervention, is an approach to caregiving that is attachment-based, developmentally appropriate, and responsive to trauma. I think of TBRI as a tripod, as there are 3 legs that make it stand strongly: empowering principles, connecting principles, and correcting principles. The empowering principles encompass physiological strategies, or meeting the child's internal needs, and ecological strategies, or meeting the child's environmental needs. First, we will talk about the physiological strategies in meeting the child's needs for nutrition, hydration, and sleep. For nutrition, make sure to see that your child has a snack at least every 2 hours. Low blood glucose is associated with cognitive and academic deficits, difficulty concentrating and listening, anxiety, depression, irritability, aggression, and difficulty regulating behaviors. Offer snacks frequently and regularly, and try to give options that are low on the glycemic index and choices that are also sensory rich, like crunchy or crispy. Meltdowns are most likely when tired or hungry, so handling snacks like this will have many benefits. Drinking every 2 hours is also amazingly important. You only actually have the feeling of thirsty once it's too late and your body is becoming dehydrated. Dehydration influences concentration, anxiety, memory, and mood. So give your child a drink often and regularly, at least every 2 hours. Of course, water's best. And model good hydration yourself by drinking lots of water throughout the day. As we discussed during the smooth transition segment, bedtime routines are very important, as a child is very vulnerable when sleeping. Also, it's a natural time that grieving behaviors come out, such as nightmares, night terrors, nighttime crying, or just fitful sleep. Establish a good routine, and simple is fine, such as bath, lotion, protein snack, which is a physiological empowering strategy, book, prayer, and kiss goodnight. Giving your child a good bedtime routine also follows the ecological empowering strategies because that allows them to know what will happen next. Help your child to have at least 8 hours of good sleep per night, and most kids require more sleep at night to feel their best. Resist the urge to cut out a daily nap too soon, thinking that that may help them sleep better at night. Although it might seem counterintuitive, if a child is too exhausted at night, they don't sleep well. Especially in the first few weeks and months at home, let your child guide their sleeping patterns. If they need a nap, please let them have one, even if it's 5:30 in the afternoon. And don't wake them up. Let them wake naturally from their nap. Children are so much more in tune with their body's need for sleep than adults are. In addition to physiological needs of nutrition, hydration, and sleep, sensory processing will most likely need attention with children from hard places. Sensory input processing means how the body takes in and interprets information. When we think of the senses, sight, taste, hearing, touch, and smell immediately spring to mind. These are usually called the external senses. But our sensory system is much more complex than just the external senses. We also have body-centered senses, which include vestibular, proprioceptive, and tactile senses. The vestibular sense is about the movement of fluid in our inner ears and is responsible for balance and spatial orientation. Basically, this tells us where we are in the world. You can engage the vestibular sense by swinging, spinning, or hanging upside down. But you should limit this interaction a bit, as A little vestibular stimulation goes a long way, and too much for a child is likely to result in a meltdown. Some very sensitive kids, when their vestibular sense is overstimulated, can be off balance for a day or more. Proprioceptive sense can be considered as pressure and awareness, or how deep touch registers in our muscles. Weighted blankets or lap pads, deep massage, and hanging or swinging on monkey bars are examples of engaging the proprioceptive sense. The tactile sense is the sense of touch. Some children with sensory needs may overreact to touch, such as a clothing tag bothering his neck, or underreact to touch in that he doesn't seem to notice when he is touching something or when he was touched. Tactile under-response can look like a clumsy child. Sensory processing disorder, or SPD for short, can happen when the vestibular, proprioceptive, and tactile senses do not appropriately develop and one has difficulty in managing the sensations that come in either through the internal or external environments. Basically, the senses do not work together as they were intended to understand the information that's being taken in. Everyday sights and sounds can be overwhelming. We have already learned about these risk factors of being from a hard place. Sensory processing issues occur in 20% of the general population, but with children from a hard place, 80 to 90% will have some sensory processing needs. You need to expect and prepare that your child can benefit from a sensory-rich environment, while also paying close attention to the cues that he shows you from too much sensory stimulation. For example, notice carefully how he responds to sensory stimulation, such as in the grocery store, at church, visiting the park, etc. An occupational therapist, especially one trained specifically in sensory processing disorder with children, can be a highly valued member of your child's team to succeed. Also, many children respond very well to massage therapy. If nothing else, maybe meet with a massage therapist and bring a child with you for practice to show massage motions that can be used when your child comes home. So the physiological strategies are about meeting the child's internal needs, and the ecological strategies are about the child's external needs. Just like their bodies, children's environments, what's going on around them, can influence the way they encounter the world. Strategies can include making a daily bedtime and waking routine or ritual. A child who has been on guard about all of the changes in life needs to have peace about understanding what is going to happen next. Routines are very important for all children, but for children from hard places, they are required. Transitions are moving a child from one activity to the next, such as stopping our play at the park and going home. Transitions that might not seem abrupt to parents or caregivers are often just that to children. Managing these daily transitions with techniques like time notices and visible schedules can make the process smoother for the entire family. Give time notices to your child, such as, in 10 minutes, we will need to put the crowns away and run some errands. Check in to make sure she understands with, got it, and make eye contact. 5 minutes later, give a verbal reminder. 1 minute before it's time to go, give another reminder. When transitions are handled like this, putting away the crowns and preparing to leave will not be a surprise to the child. Some kids do well with setting their own timer for transitions. The most important area of concentration of the TBRI empowering principle ecological strategies is about transitions. Most definitely, giving your child good notice of change in activities is recognized as very necessary. So families, highlight in bold print in your notes the need for concentrating on transitions with your child. Self-regulation means the child listening to their body and meeting their need, whether it may be listening to their body and feeling hungry, so seeking food, feeling thirsty and seeking drink, overwhelmed and seeking calm, or too tired and seeking stimulation. Using engine plates from the book How Does Your Engine Run by Michelle Morris can be a wonderful resource in helping a child with sensory processing issues to learn to self-regulate. To make an engine plate, all you need is a circle. A paper plate works well for that. Crayons to color your ranges, and an arrow that you can spin to the right range. To use, you ask the child how their engine is running. If it's too low, they are feeling slow and maybe need a snack or an activity. If too high, they might need a calming activity such as wall push-ups, stretching, or breathing activities. Using an engine plate helps the child to be aware of how their body is feeling, and eventually they will be able to regulate on their own. In fact, it's a good idea for every member of your family to use an engine plate. Okay, so now we're ready to talk about the second leg of the TBRI tripod, the connecting principles. I would like to say real quick that through my discussion of attachment, I refer to mom's relationship with baby. I will say mom a lot, just because by biological design, the first relationship and primary attachment figure for the child is almost always with their mothers. Of course, if mom is not there, or for another reason, dad or big sister or grandma or whoever is the child's primary attachment figure, the same would apply to the child's relationship with them. Just know that when I say mom, I mean primary attachment figure. Adoption professionals say bonding and attachment a lot, and they are pretty much used interchangeably. For clarity, I would like to offer you definitions of these terms. Attachment is the reciprocal, affectionate, enduring emotional bond between individuals. It is the basis for many human relationships, such as those between very close friends, spouses, siblings, grandparents, or other extended family. The attachment of a child to parent and parent to child, however, is the type of attachment most important when we're talking about adoption. Bonding is the process that the child experiences in developing lasting emotional ties with his or her immediate caregivers. Bonding is seen as the initial and significant developmental achievement for a human being, and is fundamental to the person's capacity to relate properly to others throughout its lifetime. For several decades, we have understood what is called by psychologists, researchers, and clinicians the attachment cycle. The attachment cycle simply consists of the child having a need, the need being expressed, and the child becoming emotionally distressed. In an optimal environment, the need would be consistently met. The child learns that they are important, safe, and that their caregiver will take care of them. Their stress neurochemicals go up when they are expressing the need, and then they come down when the need is met by a loving and attentive mommy. Excitatory neurotransmitters kick in when the baby cries to say, "I am hungry," and inhibitory neurotransmitters release when mommy comes to feed the baby. Stress, then calm, happens thousands of times during the infant's first year of life. In healthy infant attachment, the brain, body, and environment work together to create a pattern of calm following distress. Children learn that their voices matter and they can use their voice to ask for what they need. When the child's needs are met, the foundation is laid for trust, self-worth, voice, self-regulation, and mental health throughout life. For some children, and probably most of those that will be received through adoption, the consistent meeting of the need during the infant's first year of life does not occur. Perhaps the physical needs were usually met, but there was no time for attention to the emotional needs. For whatever the reason may be, the baby's needs were not met, and the child experiences chronic distress. Healthy, secure attachment does not occur during the first year of life. The child cannot trust that the adult will come and meet their needs. They do not have self-worth. They learned that they were not important because if they were, someone would have come and taken care of them. They did not learn self-efficacy or that they had a voice because no one heard it. They did not learn self-regulation. They were left in chronic distress, therefore did not learn the tools to calm down from a loving caregiver. No one showed them with any consistency that they were going to be okay. If the child's early life experience is not healed, we would predict to see diagnoses of ADD or ADHD beginning around ages 4 to 6, depression and or anxiety at ages 8 to 10, and bipolar disorder at 12 and up. So what do we do to help heal the child from the early life experiences? If the child did not receive the critical, tender mentoring as an infant, then we need to give it to them now at whatever age they are. First, we must meet the child's needs with consistency and efficiency, and also a spirit of delight that you're being given an opportunity to heal the child's early wounds by meeting his needs. Say yes as much as possible. Remember, in the infant's first year of life, a baby in a healthy environment gets lots and lots of yeses. She cries and says, "I'm hungry," and mommy says, "Yes, I will feed you." She cries and says, "I'm lonely," and mommy says, "Yes, I will cuddle you." She cries and says, "I'm wet," and mommy says, "Yes, I will change you." Every time you say yes to your child's need, even if it's a want, you are making a trust investment with your child. So say yes as often as possible. Set up situations where you can say yes. Even when you have to say no, find a way to also say yes. When your child's needs are met this way, they will learn to trust that you are going to take care of them. Show the child his preciousness. This happens between a mother and baby in a healthy environment when mom cradles her baby, gazes into his eyes, and coos at him. "Oh, what a handsome boy you are. I love you so much. You are mommy's sweet baby." She plays a game with her baby, cooing and grinning back and forth at him. She smiles and laughs and marvels at everything he does. This baby knows he is precious. For a child that did not have these experiences during the first year of life, he does not learn how wonderful and special he is. So, in order to restore him back on the trajectory of emotional and mental health, he will need to learn it now. Use as much kind eye contact, soft touch, gentle voice, and loving words with your child as possible to teach him that he is precious. Just like you would have done if he would have joined your family as a newborn. Create opportunities to show him how wonderful he is. Will help him to learn his own self-worth. Teach the child he has a voice. This is also called self-efficacy. It basically means that what is important to him is important to you. Respect his autonomy. Let him make appropriate choices and decisions. Permit compromises. Show him that you believe his feelings are important. Help the child to calm when stressed. Teaching your child calming techniques like deep breathing, stretching, using pressure points, etc., can be very empowering to your child. And by using these techniques, you will lay a new foundation with your child for his emotional and mental health. The TBRI connecting principle includes mindfulness strategies, or being aware of what the parent brings to the parent-child relationship, and engagement strategies, or connecting with the child non-verbally through eye contact and body language. So you may be wondering, why is mindfulness so important? Well, the parent's childhood influences the type of care that they will give to their child. The experiences that we had as children, good or bad, have helped to shape the way that we will parent our children. This is one reason why social workers during the home study process are always so interested to know so much about their clients' childhood backgrounds. The attachment style that was set during infancy is generally carried through life, which is great news for many, especially if you were a securely attached infant and are now a securely attached adult. But for those that weren't so lucky, with some work you can earn your security and redirect your path of capability in parenting your child to secure attachment. If you had early trauma or do not feel that you were securely attached with your parents, it is a good idea to discuss this with your adoption social worker or a therapist to consider how your childhood experiences will affect your ability to parent your child. Mindfulness also involves being attuned to your child's needs, noticing their cues, and becoming proactive in meeting their needs. An example of being tuned in to your child is realizing that your child's glazed look in her eyes shows that she is moving to a meltdown, perhaps due to overstimulation of environment, rather than just calling it acting out in public. Taking time for inward reflection, giving yourself an opportunity to review your experiences to discover how they have brought you to this point in your life, allows us to practice being still and intentionally create the kind of future we want to have. Dr. Dan Siegel, clinical professor at UCLA School of Medicine, says that a child from a hard place is like a dormant seed in a hard shell that needs attentive nurturing to break through and grow. When a child has been hurt a lot, it's much easier and less scary to stay safe inside the protective shell rather than to open up and become vulnerable to the elements. But if the child doesn't break through, he would miss the full opportunities of life. So it's the parent's job to be present with the child, meeting them where they are. And through the parent's continued mindful presence, the child will understand and trust, and soon they will allow nurturance, which brings the dormant parts of their brain that were never safe to grow to life. And now we will focus on the engagement strategy of the connecting principle. The engagement strategies are simple, safe, healthy ways to connect with a child in a language they understand. They move a child towards secure attachment and facilitate the development of attachment behaviors. The engagement strategies include nurturing touch, kind eye contact, gentle voice quality, behavior matching, and playful interaction. Physical touch is very connecting. Safe, healthy touch releases oxytocin and dopamine, which reduce the child's stress chemicals. Therefore, it is also an important empowering strategy towards self-regulation. Healthy touch helps the child's brain to calm down. But you know, when a parent touches a child in a loving way, such as engaging in a gentle massage or stroking the child's hair, the parent's brain also releases oxytocin, so that the attachment benefit is not just child to parent, but also parent to child. Examples include holding hands, rubbing the child's back, a playful nudge, sweeping the hair out of the child's face, applying lotion to the child's arms, legs, or back, and of course giving a massage with the child's permission. Asking for and receiving permission for touch is extremely important, and some kids from a hard place, especially those with histories of abuse, may not be ready for touch right away. That's okay. Keep asking, and most likely in time you will have permission. You should give eye contact and ask, is it okay to give you a hug? Or is it okay to hold your hand? And of course, respect whatever their answer may be. For example, rather than handing the child the bottle of sunscreen, put it on their back yourself. And make sure to rub it in well and slowly and put lots on so your child is very well protected. Eye contact is probably the most powerful engagement strategy. When eye contact between two people is engaged, the individuals are more likely to hear and understand each other. That does not mean that piercing eye contact is needed. Kind, warm eyes, of course, is what the child will respond best to. And many kids aren't ready for too much eye contact. Therefore, just brief glimpses with soft words are perfectly fine. Especially focus on eye contact when feeding. Just as a mother cradles her baby and looks into her eyes, connection through nutrition is very natural. Gentle asking and chin prompts encourage eye contact. For example, you can say, "Can I see those pretty eyes?" and then admire with, "Wow, I love seeing your beautiful eyes." You only need a brief moment to bring the child into connection and engagement with kind eyes. Voice quality is an engagement strategy in that kind, gentle, loving voice draws an individual to you, and of course, harsh, angry, annoyed tone means the individual is in trouble and he wants to get away. And then behavior matching is simply a way of showing your child through your actions, "I get you." It conveys the message of safety and understanding. The parent positions themselves to match the child and mirrors the child's body language. For example, if the child is sitting, the parent can sit. If the child is quiet, the parent is also quiet. If they are engaged in activity, the parent can be part of that activity, such as clapping and counting when the child is jumping rope in sync with each of the child's landings. Or the parent can play alongside of the child. For example, he is coloring, so the parent can color as well. Or if he's running a car along the kitchen floor, you can do that also. It's a way of non-verbally building a connection that you get them and like them without necessarily saying anything. Playful interaction is always the preferred means for interacting with your child. Play allows a parent to safely touch the heart of a vulnerable child. Shared silliness, laughter, and games all send the message that you mean the child no harm. When you are playful and fun, the child will not be in fear. Simply, kids love to play and have fun most of the time and will respond best to a new parent in this way. Play allows the parent to build a connection with the child, but also through play, the parent is able to correct and teach them behavior in a positive and fun manner, therefore making desirable behaviors more likely to be repeated. For example, if your child becomes sassy and you say, "Whoa, that doesn't feel very kind or respectful, let's try it again," versus an angry lecture, the parent is much more likely to have more desirable future behaviors, and the vibe in the house is more likely to return to fun and non-aggressive with a playful, less intimidating interaction. So, have you noticed that all of the engagement strategies mirror the interaction that a mommy and infant would share in a healthy environment? A mother cradles her newborn baby and strokes her chubby little legs. She looks lovingly at her beautiful baby and gazes deeply into her eyes. She coos and admires her baby with a kind and gentle voice. She mirrors her expressions. When baby smiles, mommy smiles. She tickles her baby's toes and plays peekaboo and delights when the baby starts to giggle and squeal. When we began this attachment session, I said that if the child does not have, during infancy, the warm and loving mentoring that she needs to advance to her greatest capacity of emotional growth, she still needs the same needs met in order to reach her potential towards secure attachment. In forming an early attachment, it is a good idea if only one parent provides the majority of childcare and nutrition during the first several days or weeks. Usually, mom establishes as the primary caregiver because she will either be staying home with the child or will be taking a long maternity leave. But if dad's going to have more time off from work, then dad should step in as the primary caregiver. This means that as much of the hands-on parenting, the feeding, assistance with personal care, attention to physical touch, etc., should be provided by one parent rather than mom and dad competing for the initial bond. It is easier for the child to transfer a bond once it's been established with one parent than to form two bonds at the same time. So, for infants and toddlers, adoption and attachment specialists agree that a newly adopted child should not be held by anyone outside the household right away. Again, from the child's perspective, his whole life has just changed with no warning. In his mind, when mom passes him to Aunt Susie, what is to keep her from taking him off to yet another country to live? It's your job to help your child understand as quickly as possible that this is his forever family and that he doesn't have to be scared about another big change. This is done by the parents, no one else, turning the cycle of need. It is often very difficult for friends and family, especially eager grandparents, to understand why it is so important that the child be cared for by his parents only at first. I always encourage families to call a meeting before the child's arrival where you can sit down and talk about how you will parent this child for the first few weeks or months at home. Tell them no parties yet. You can come and visit, but you can't hold the baby. Tell them that your adoption agency said no one can hold the baby but the parents for the first few weeks or months. Tell them you're going to look like hovering parents for a little while, but it is important for the child's bond development to have a very consistent and therapeutic home. Tell them you appreciate their support of your first parenting experience with this child and that the child will adjust better and will form relationships with them more easily if you take the time and attention to helping the child bond very early. If you are offered help, take it in the form of house cleaning, errands, care for other children, meal preparation, or whatever, just not as babysitting for the new one. It is also important to learn about symptoms of attachment disorders. Most families adopting babies or young toddlers or even older children will not experience attachment problems, and incorporating the TBRI, empowering and connecting principles into your family will make attachment problems less likely, as well as move the child with attachment issues towards secure attachment. But it is wise to be educated on symptoms of attachment disorders so that you can seek help early if needed. Attachment disorders are extremely difficult for adoptive families, and professional interventions will be needed. Every individual adoptive family needs to take responsibility for learning about attachment problems, seeking help if needed, and providing careful attention to moving the child towards health and healing. Symptoms of attachment problems include superficially charming to get what he or she wants, indiscriminately friendly to all adults, even strangers, difficulty with genuine affection and eye contact, except when lying, manipulative, controlling, or bossy behaviors, cruelty to animals, preoccupation with fire or death, rage or inappropriately long temper tantrums, incontinence, lack of trust in caregivers.
Parenting a child who has RAD is pure hell, plain and simple. My daughter hates me and is manipulated in all her interactions with me. She has never let me in to really see who she is, and she pulls me all the time. If I start to get close, she pushes me away to make sure she can reject me first. If I start to pull away, she becomes clingy and fearful. It always feels like an act, like I'm in some sort of play and she's the director. She wants control of everything and everyone, even something as simple as where everyone sits at dinner when we go out to eat. This is something my daughter plans out and tries to direct. When her directions are unheeded, there's a great deal of sulking and drama. Any type of change or transition is met with resistance and with a compulsive need to control what is going on. If I need to run a quick errand after I pick her up from school, it sends her into a tizzy. This was not something she planned into her day. I get so tired of everything being a battle. She can never relax and just trust. I've read all about the fight or flight response, and I try to understand what she's going through, but that does not make it any easier to deal with, especially when I'm tired and just need a break, which I never get. When I'm exhausted, that is when she notches up her behaviors. It feels like she preys on my emotions and seeks to control even how I feel. The very air around her is so heavy. Sometimes that I feel like I can't breathe. I sometimes feel like she has a dark storm cloud over her and she sucks the life out of me when she is near. That is a terrible way to feel about my own child. A child that I love and that I want to reach. I spend a great deal of time feeling guilty because I cannot seem to break through all the trauma she's experienced to get her to trust me. From an adoptive parent in the throes of her child's reactive attachment disorder.
From the perspective of an adoptive mother helping her child heal and succeed after a diagnosis of RAD, I think that other parents should know that one parent, usually the mother because she is in that primary caregiving role, takes the brunt of the abuse from the child. The secondary parent needs to stand by the primary and give total support. Sometimes it is a long time before the secondary parent even realizes how serious the situation really is. It often seems like the child will have a halo when one parent is around and horns when the other one is there. This causes the secondary parent to doubt the primary, which creates an obstacle in the relationship. These RAD children are beyond manipulative. They love to triangulate any relationship, especially that of a father, mother, and child. If they can insert a wedge, even in the smallest way, they feel success. They love drama. From parenting a child like this, I have learned that both parents have to have a united front, firm rules, and clear consequences. Eventually, our daughter learned this is all an important part of parental love.
RAD kids often show violence, and parents should never allow this in the home. When it happens, the child needs to know severe consequences will come. Police were at our house quite often during Heather's trying years, but she is better for it. Yes, she did leave the home and stay in outside care, but she always came back. And yes, she threw it in our faces when we were just getting rid of her, but we stuck it out, and she is such a different person today. It was very hard and trying, but today I can say it was definitely worth every exhausting minute. The child we have today isn't perfect, no child is, or adult for that matter, but she is a normal, happy teenager. It is such a blessing to be able to say that. I have tears in my eyes while I write this because we wondered if Heather would ever be a truly happy person after so much hurt in her little life. But by God's grace and lots of hard work, I am able to say that today, yes, I have a happy child.
And now we will talk about TBRI's third leg of the tripod, the correcting principle, which includes both proactive and responsive strategies. The proactive strategies are intended to teach positive social skills during times of calm, and the responsive strategies are for handling challenges. First, we will learn about the proactive strategies, which include choices, compromises, sharing power, and life value terms. They are meant to teach the child during times of calm. The child will learn better when they are calm than when they are stressed. Would you do better learning a concept you find complicated when things are calm, you're well rested, and you just had a snack than if you were in the middle of a neurochemical storm? When the child learns during times of calm, they are more likely to be able to recall information when stressed. Many children who have experienced a traumatic event or chronic distress have a need to keep things under control, especially early in an attachment relationship when they are deciding whether a new individual can be trusted to take good care of them and meet their needs. The child especially needs predictability in their environment. Choices offer children appropriate levels of control over their daily lives and often diffuse situations that have the potential to become challenging ones. When offering choices, make sure that there is no right or wrong choice and that both are options the parent would be happy with. Also, choices should be concrete and easy to understand. Using the visual cue to represent choice 1 and choice 2 also helps the child process the information that you are giving. 2 choices are enough. Offering more options can be confusing and intimidating. Giving your child a choice also allows your child an opportunity to use his voice and you an opportunity to build trust by hearing his voice. An example would be, would you like a peanut butter sandwich or a turkey stick for a snack? Compromises allow children to negotiate a different choice when the ones offered don't necessarily agree with them. Many of us have had the experience of being at a restaurant and asking to substitute one side dish for another because we didn't want or couldn't eat what was being offered. It's much the same way with teaching children to ask, may I have a compromise? In our snack example, the child may say, may I please have goldfish crackers instead? By saying yes, many parents feel they would be giving in. However, they are actually teaching children the valuable skill of using their words to ask for what they want and need and building trust by honoring their children's voices. And the goal is still being met. The child still has a snack and behavior continues to move forward smoothly. Of course, sometimes the compromise suggested will not be possible or acceptable. Perhaps you are all out of goldfish crackers. You could say, sorry, buddy, that compromise won't work because the goldfish crackers are all gone. But do you have another idea in mind? In this way, although technically you are saying no to the crackers, you are still saying yes to his opportunity to make his own snack decision. Keep in mind that choices and compromises are meant to keep behavior on track and moving forward. Sharing appropriate levels of power with children allows them to practice making meaningful decisions while the parent is still in charge of the situation. The aim is not to create an argumentative situation or allow children to debate every decision, but to help them learn that their words have power and that safe adults will listen to their voices. Sharing power also shows children that parents trust them, hear their voices and opinions, and can see them for who they really are. Life value terms are short phrases with big meaning that can be woven into everyday life, even during choices and compromises. Teaching children to speak to others with respect and to ask permission and be gentle and kind helps to instill character and social competence. Life value terms are best taught in a playful way with a kind, playful voice.
And these are the TBRI life value terms. They are short, simple, and clear, and can be considered the family rules. With respect, gentle and kind, cooperate and compromise, consequences, askin' or tellin', listen and obey, no hurts, stick together, ask permission, use your words, accept no.
TBRI life value terms are short, simple, and clear. Gentle and kind, no hurts, stick together. These are kind of family rules for respect. And now for the responsive strategies of the correcting principle. Discipline is part of parenting that every mom and dad wishes was unneeded. Really, wouldn't it be so much easier if we had playful engagement with our kids pretty much all the time, told them one time what was expected of them, and they always displayed good and responsible behavior? Well, we all know that's not going to happen. Kids are going to test boundaries, disobey, display sassy or disrespectful behavior, hit their siblings, etc., etc., etc. And mom and dad are going to have to deal with all of these issues. We know that with your incorporation of the empowering strategies, including frequent snacks, good sleep, sensory activities, and so on, as well as the connecting strategies of touch, eye contact, gentle voice, playful engagement, etc., that the need for discipline will be much less likely than if you're not including these strategies. But when discipline is needed, TBRI gives you good ideas for teaching and correcting behavior, the ideal response, and levels of response. The ideal response stands for immediate. Respond within 3 seconds whenever possible. Learning occurs best when behaviors are addressed right away. When you are anticipating that discipline may be needed, such as your child often has difficulty getting along with a particular neighborhood kid and they are trying to play together, you know you need to stay close. Being in close proximity to your child throughout much of the day makes the connecting strategies easier to apply. Also, when discipline is needed, being close allows you to handle the issue immediately within 3 seconds. Direct. Use your engagement strategies. For example, get on the child's level and use soft eye contact and lower your voice tone a bit. Efficient. Use only the amount of intervention necessary to get behavior back on track. Over-responding may drive children into worse behavior. I remember hearing Dr. Purvis and Dr. Cross use the saying, "Don't respond to a gnat with an elephant gun." That means a little issue only requires a little response. Try not to overreact. Action-based learning is the most salient way to absorb knowledge. For example, guide the child through a redo or having the child make amends in some small way. I love having children do the redo. Return to the scene of the crime and do it again, but this time the right way. Having the child end on the right way gives the child a body memory that they can return to in similar situations. Also, I feel it allows for the quickest return to playful engagement. Leveled at the behavior, not the child. For children from hard places, self-esteem is very fragile. Parents must make clear that children are not defined by their behavior. Their behavior is not who they are. Correction should address the behavior at hand, not the child. For example, it's not okay to hit, kind and gentle, buddy, versus mean people hit, don't let me see you hit again. Levels of response simply means handling the challenge with the least amount of force necessary that will keep the interaction moving forward, teach and correct the issue so that we can return to playful engagement. The first level itself is playful engagement. Hopefully, the correction can happen when the dynamic is still playful so that you can redirect the child without breaking stride, such as, whoa, that didn't sound kind. Would you like to try it again with respect? Or, are you asking or telling? In a playful voice. Use playful engagement consistently. This technique reduces misbehavior dramatically over time because it strengthens the relationship between children and their caregivers. If the child answers the playful prompt, are you asking or telling, with I'm telling, things will need to advance to the next level. Structured engagement means putting the situation on pause. Use a more regulated tone, a lower and slower voice. Offer two choices as concrete, quick way to get the child back on track. It might be something like, you have two choices. One, you can ask me with respect, or two, the answer will be no. Hopefully, the child chooses to ask with respect. If she doesn't and needs time to settle and self-regulate first, make sure to go back and have a behavioral redo, as this helps her feel more successful for handling disappointment in the future. And walking through the motions of the right behavior is good for muscle memory. If the child digs in his heels further and refuses to cooperate, calming engagement allows children to regulate with adult assistance. Use time in and keep children close rather than sending them away, as in a traditional timeout. This lets them know that you are there for support and guidance. Work out a predetermined, quiet, or calm place that adolescents can go to when feeling overwhelmed. After the child has returned to calm, go back to the scene of the crime and walk through the correct behavior. Level 4 is reserved for violence or aggression. If protective engagement is necessary, you will have to seek formal training that is accepted and recognized by your state. For families that have fully incorporated the empowering and connecting strategies into their home, it's unlikely that protective engagement would ever be needed. Using role play with a child is probably my most favorite technique for teaching a child good behaviors. Role play can be fun, silly, and playful. It's a game where each participant can be as dramatic as they want to be because we're just pretending. Depending on whether your child does better with structured or imaginative play, you can set up the role play game by writing out scenario note cards or even saying something like, let's pretend that it's bedtime and I'm going to tell you to go to bed. First, show me the disrespectful way that you could answer me. And then mom will say, hey, honey muffins, it's time for bed. And the child might say, no, I don't want to go to bed. Here, mommy can be like, whoa, that was awesome, no respect. Now let's do it with respect. Hey, sugar pie, it's time for bed. And then the child will practice, okay, mommy, kissy kissy. Then mom can celebrate, that was great respect. Wow, you are awesome at role play. Let's try another. First, let's do it the wrong way. Hey, sweet pea, you can have carrots or celery for a snack. Which would you like? The child playing the game the wrong way the first time will say, blah, puke. I don't like those. And mom can celebrate the child's good job. Then she can say, okay, let's try it again, but this time with respect. And it's okay if you want to ask me for a compromise. So then mom begins again. Okay, my beautiful baby girl, you can have carrots or celery for snack. Which would you like? The child might say, I don't want those. Can I have a compromise? And then mom can say, sure, what do you have in mind? The child may say, cookies. Mom might say, sorry, cookies won't work for me. What about peanut butter crackers? Practicing these scenarios that may be an opportunity for challenge gives the child a positive memory to draw on for future situations. So when mom says, okay, sweetie, time for bed, for real, the child is going to remember how mom would expect her to handle the respect and behavior. When the practice was ended on the right way, she's more likely to repeat it in the future. Role play teaches a child desirable family interactions during a time of both calm and fun. For a child who's been in an orphanage or otherwise from a hard place, they likely know very well the boundaries and expectations in their former environment, and they've learned coping strategies for handling themselves. But now, when they are in a healthy family with all sorts of new freedoms and expectations, figuring out exactly where boundaries are set can be frustrating and intimidating. When we teach with role play, the consequence of punishment is taken out of the equation because it's all just pretend. Role play also allows the parent to celebrate the child's good choices when they are calm, engaged, and cooperative. In times of stress, when we are in the responsive mode of correction, celebrating the good choices is dependent on the child actually making the good choice, which can be a toss-up. However, when they are role-playing and cooperating, they are easily making the good choices in order to play the game. Therefore, giving the parent an almost guaranteed opportunity to praise the child for making the good choice. And teaching with role play makes returning the interaction to playful after a behavioral challenge even easier. For example, say you practice the time for bed scenario on Sunday. On Wednesday night, you say, for real, okay, time to go to bed. And she says, no, I want to watch TV. Instead of the parent needing to advance the reaction on the levels of response, they could keep things playful by saying, whoa, that was great, no respect. Now let's do it with respect. And then give your request again in a more dramatic, sing-songy way. Okay, my pretty princess, time for bed. And you have a great chance at drawing her in to compliance with fun and playful interaction. And here are a few final points about the correcting strategy. After responsive interaction is needed, the goal is always to return to playful engagement. Not only should behavior have changed by this point, but the child should also feel content and connected to their caregiver following a behavioral episode. Felt safety requires follow-through on what you say. Do not wage empty threats. Remember, the child will trust you by your follow-through on the first then. So if you don't fully mean it, don't say it. And when it's over, it's over. The parent should not remain stern or annoyed because, remember, the discipline is leveled at the behavior, not the child. Once the behavior is back on track, then the parent-child relationship should be all good. You should go back to loving and engaging the child like the challenge never even happened. No pouting or grudges.
Alan and Deborah Jones completed an international adoption of a child less than 1 year of age. Though they had deep love for their son, as the tiny infant grew into a young man, the mildly challenging behaviors he displayed as a young child grew severe with passing years. The family sought countless therapies without much progress, and eventually found themselves in crisis, depression, and considering placement in a residential treatment center. However, through intensive family work and healing and trust-based relational intervention, as guided by Dr. Karen Pruvis, the family and child were able to heal, connect, and succeed. Deborah Jones has established PACT, Parenting Adoptees Can Trust, and shares her family story in her book, God, Are You Nice or Mean? Trusting God After the Orphanage. In this interview, she shares some of her story and suggestions to help new parents and children start off on the right foot.
Yes, we really believed the myth that if you get a child under 2 years of age, that love and a good home is all you'll need, which sounds so ridiculous this side of our journey. Dane was 11 months old when he came into our lives, actually came to America, and he was very neglected, very malnourished, and we thought that we could just catch him up, and that would be the biggest part of our journey. I had a special ed background. My husband was a teacher, and we felt quite confident that two Texas teachers could parent one tiny orphan from Romania. But we had a lot to learn, and our goal should not have been to catch him up on that developmental trajectory. It should have been to start from day one like he was a newborn. And so we made some huge mistakes in that area. There was very little information at that time available to us. Yes, it was very challenging for us. We saw most of his problems as, medical problems or behavior problems, and we were trying very behaviorist approaches to handle them, but his violence was severe. He would rage, hit, bite, kick, spit, pinch, throw things, you name it, and sometimes it would last 2 to 3 hours. It was just really unbearable, and unfortunately we were trying mostly behaviorist approaches to that or medical interventions, and our calendars were filled with specialists and doctors and counselors and special education meetings, and he received many labels, some of which probably were not accurate, but ADHD, oppositional defiant disorder, learning disabilities, post-traumatic stress. We did later learn that he had fetal alcohol syndrome and had suffered lead toxicity in that area of Romania. So he had multiple brain issues that we didn't know how to handle. We were way in over our heads, and it was a very, very difficult lifestyle. And even when it wasn't severe range, just the constant hyperactivity and getting into so much so fast. He had significant sensory processing issues, and so he was very easily overstimulated in environments that had a lot of noise or people or visual and auditory stimulation. So it was just really hard. We felt like our whole lives revolved around Dane's problems. It was really very painful. Yes, I really can, and it can be very isolating to feel like there's no one who is dealing with the severity of issues in your home. And I know early on, people would say, "Oh, Debbie, you just had that sweet little girl. Boys are different." And I'm thinking, "Are you crazy? This is not anywhere near what the normal, typical family is dealing with." But I couldn't find anyone who could relate to what I was doing. I wasn't so isolated that I didn't keep seeking help. I guess I'm just strong-willed, hard-headed Italian enough to keep searching, and we searched for many, many answers from lots of specialists and kept searching. Our journey was a little different than some of the journeys today. There's a lot of a lot of faith-based adoption movements out there today that are encouraging people and even recruiting people to adopt, and our journey was much different than that. We adopted because we wanted a son, and I had health issues that prevented me from having a second pregnancy. But I think in the faith-based movement, we're seeing some people who perhaps feel like, because I'm talking up adoption in my church, I sure can't let someone know that it's not all a bed of roses. And so, unfortunately, that leads to them possibly not seeking answers as early in their journey as they should, and they feel very isolated. So I encourage adoption agencies and ministries to really promote pre-adopt education. We are firm believers in adoption, but we're believers in informed adoption so that parents can start these interventions way earlier than we did. Yes, our daughter Megan was 3 when we brought Dane home, and we really feel like she ended up suffering sort of a secondary post-traumatic stress from all of the constant chaos. And Alan and I bore a lot of guilt for bringing this into her young life. She spent much time isolated in her room. She was embarrassed to bring friends home, and we thought we were making up for it by little mother-daughter lunch outings or shopping trips or weekends away. But in many ways, we didn't give her a strong enough voice during that. And we hit a real crisis point in our family when Dane was 11. And she had a meltdown that was very uncharacteristic of her and was just screaming at us, how can we go on like this? And what are we going to do if he hurts someone, Mom? And what if your health issues get worse because of all this and you end up in a wheelchair? And what happens when you die? Do I get stuck with all this? I mean, it was really hard questions, and questions that we had probably thought of but were afraid to put words to. And at that point in our journey, our counselor, who specialized in reactive attachment disorder, recommended that we remove Dane from our home and place him in a residential treatment center of some type to not sink the whole ship trying to save the one. So it was a horribly painful time for all of us, and we really reached a point where no one in the family felt like they could go on anymore. So we loved him so much. It was awful. It was like sending your baby, who was more like a kindergartner, someplace away, knowing that wouldn't be right for him, but you knew you couldn't go on another day like we had been going on. And so we did a lot of grieving, and thankfully God had a different plan for us. I think most of the interventions we tried were either medically based or behaviorally based. They were looking at it like a medical problem to solve. Not that there weren't some that needed solving, but many of the medications made him worse. I mean, one time at age 4, he nearly threw himself out of a moving car on the freeway. He would just go psychotic on some of the medicines. But if they weren't looked at as medical problems, they were looked at as behavior problems. And those professionals were all missing that he really had significant brain development problems, neurochemistry problems, attachment issues, and sensory processing issues. And so TBRI was the first model that addressed all of those needs and that put us back in the driver's seat as meeting those needs just like we would have with a newborn. Well, instead of sending him to a residential treatment facility like the counselor had recommended, we put everything on hold. And I mean everything. I took a 4-month leave of absence from my job. What I really did was take a leave of absence from life because there was no time for really anything other than the intensive intervention that we did in our home. So no ladies' Bible study, no meetings with friends. I didn't take phone calls, check emails, or anything while Dane was awake. I really put everything on hold. And my husband continued to work, but during the non-work hours, he was just as much on board as I was. And we placed Dane within arm's reach during all waking hours and set out to give him, as Karen Purvis says, those 100,000 yeses that he missed in the first year of life. We were available to meet his every need. We worked very hard to stop the violence and give him voice voice and help him to identify the emotions and be able to express them so that he could put voice with what he was feeling and use his words to get his needs met instead of control and aggression and violence. It was the most difficult thing we've ever done, but the most life-changing thing we've ever done. And I recommend and meet families today that need to do just that. And it's a big sacrifice, but in 6 months he had made huge gains. Like from, I would say before our intervention, he was probably out of control about 90% of the time, and we'd see what we came to call the real boy about 10% of the time. And after 6 months of our intervention, we had reversed those numbers. We'd see the real Dane about 90% of the time, and the 10% could still be rough, but we had a track to run on now. And we knew what to do when he was melting down to help him feel secure and safe and get back on track.
Well, I can sum up our family's progress in 4 words. We have joy again. Today, at the age of 23, Dane is living independently with support in his own apartment. He cares for his loyal dog, Hershey. He has a part-time job in grounds and maintenance there and has just reached a level of stability that we never dreamed possible. We were told he'd never make it in a family, and that intimacy was something he'd probably never be able to handle. And so to see that he can use words to get his needs met and he's connected to his family, connected to his church, is just amazing. Not that there aren't still some difficult moments for a young adult with fetal alcohol, but we as his parents know what to do about those now. And our daughter, Megan, is doing well. She's 26 and a successful businesswoman working on her MBA and is engaged to a wonderful young man. So we're having a blast planning a June wedding. So we are all doing quite well, and we really did not know if we would be at this point several years ago. I think if we had it to do over again, we wouldn't have looked at him as a nearly year-old baby that we had to hurry and catch up and get him on the right developmental trajectory. We would have realized his needs were newborn or below. He had literally unlearned instinct of sucking a bottle, so we would have kept him close. We would have had him on our body. We would not have returned to work as quickly. We would have treated him exactly like a newborn. And I tell families that I work with today, whether your kid's 1, 2, or 12, when he comes home, in many ways, he has the attachment and trust needs of an infant. So you're going to need to meet those same needs of giving him voice and helping him feel safe and lots of yeses and lots of playful engagement to help him build trust. I think we do those simple techniques mostly through play. So if playful engagement doesn't come easy, or if parents weren't raised in a real playful environment, that can be a whole new learning process. So a lot of play. Your face needs to say to that child, just like it would looking at a newborn, aren't you the most precious thing God ever created? We look into the eyes of a newborn, and we see that, and sometimes because of the way the brain development is manifesting in behaviors, we don't see that in our older kids. But they still need to know they are precious, they are valued. We need to give them lots of yeses, and that means really intense, devoted time. I don't think you can bring home a child from this kind of traumatic or neglectful environment and just expect them to immediately start in school and we go back to work and they fit into our lifestyle as an 8 or 10-year-old would. We have to realize that it's going to take some really intensive time and commitment to get those yeses in and to give them our undivided attention for a while. Yes. My husband and I have a business called PACT, which stands for Parenting Adoptees Can Trust, and we offer in-home intensive interventions where either I or the two of us together go into families' homes and spend about 20 to 25 hours actually modeling and teaching the TBRI techniques and helping you problem solve and brainstorm how to work it out in your own family with your own schedule and on your own turf. It just seems like it's a lot easier to learn that way. We also do phone consults, and we teach parent training workshops for parent groups, ministries, adoption agencies, child care agencies, pretty much you name it, to help families learn how they can apply trust-based parenting in their everyday life. And our website, if they have interest, is www.parentingadopteescantrust.com.
And this will conclude our TBRI and attachment information segment. If you're like most, you're now officially overwhelmed with so much good information. So I want to end this study of the TBRI Empowering, Connecting, Correcting Tripod with some focus points. Remember, your child must feel safe in order to advance to deeper emotional maturity and capacity for connection. Teach your child that he is not in danger in his new home, that there's always plenty of food. Use first, then plan several times each day, such as, first, I will fix your bowl of cereal and then kiss you on the head, to show your child that you can be trusted and remind him that we're on the same team. Make sure your child has nutrition and hydration at least every 2 hours. Set a snack timer as a reminder, and make sure to have a protein snack at bedtime. Engage with your child in a sensory activity every 2 hours. Keep an idea list to choose an activity from handy, and it's best to do an activity right after a snack. If you're doing a snack every 2 hours, then a sensory activity following the snack will be easy to remember. Focus on engagement strategies. Take every opportunity for gentle eye contact, kind voice, and healthy touch. It's also not a bad idea to make part of your snack sensory routine every 2 hours a thoughtful attachment activity as well. Maybe after your snack and sensory activity, you do a back rub, hair brushing, mirror play, read a book, something like that. Repair the child's history of an attachment cycle that wasn't turned or completed by a loving caregiver. Say yes as often as possible and efficiently when the child expresses a need or desire. And correct and teach with play, role play, and redo. For more information on TBRI, the link is found in your book as well as on the screen at this time.